Sandy says read, and welcome to the channel. You guys, this evening you're going to hear my stomach growl. You're going to hear my birds complaining in the background, and you're probably going to hear my neighbors drag racing up and down the street. It is what it is. This is what we have. I apologize for the crazy, for the zany, for the wacky. I apologize. Let's just begin and see what we can do. We'll start with a wee little bit of housekeeping. I invite you to subscribe to the channel because this random wackiness, it's great, right? So subscribe for more of that. And invite your friends to subscribe as well. Because you know what? Usually we do book reviews like we're going to do tonight. And we talk about book stuff. We do booktube tags, and we make this a bookish channel. So subscribe, enjoy. So this evening, what are we doing? We're doing a book review and discussion of So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole. Let's see if we've got a glare. Yeah, we do. It's not too bad of a glare, is it? Yeah. I'm going to take the cover off of this book in just a moment so that we get rid of the glare. Hang on. Let me first give you guys the specs, as we do on this channel. This book was published in January 16th on Appreciated Dragon Day. It was released on Appreciated Dragon Day this year, 2024. The publisher is Little, Brown and Company, which is a division of Hachette Book Group. And we're going to talk about them in just a second. This is the hardcover edition, obviously. It is 386 pages. The book is also available in Kindle and audiobook format. The map inside, we're going to look at the map because the map is gorgeous and lovely. The map is by Virginia Allen. And let's get that up there where you can see it. There is this lovely map. Check that out. Isn't that kind of cool, right? Let's see. We've got our mainland, the Langlish Empire, is over here, and San Irie, the island that where our I want to say most of our action, especially where our action begins, is over here. Yeah, there you go. San Irie is this one down here. There you go, guys. There's our map. All right. This review might be a little random and crazy, even though I have just an absolute ton of notes. Okay, I really do have a ton of notes for you, but I think my blood sugar is working against us here. So we're just going to go through this like a bunch of friends having a casual conversation about a book. Okay. And in the notes, I say, I want to mention that y'all know here on this channel, we do not drag authors. We do not drag books. We talk about the good and the positive in books. And we are going to do that with this book this evening. We're going to talk about the positive and the good and the great. But I do want to say that there are some elements in this book that I did not enjoy as much as other elements. And this is an honest review, so we're going to talk about those things too. All right? The good and the bad. We're going to talk about it all. And I realized as I was reading this book, as I was going through, as I was preparing for this review, I realized that I give more grace to like indie published books and self-published books than I do to the like traditional big five published books. I do this and I recognize it in myself, and that's just how it is. And I don't think I'm going to apologize for that. I think I'm just going to acknowledge that. I recognize that the larger traditional publishers out of New York and Chicago, those big publishing houses, they have teams that work with the authors, right? You have your literary agent and an editor, your main editor who, championed your book, right? And all these other people on your team who are helping you as an author get that book polished and perfect and pristine. And I've done a video here on the channel about how reviewers can give some grace to authors who don't have those teams. And if I think of it, I'll put a link to that video in the drop-down box below, if I think of it when I upload this thing. But then there are, independent publishing houses that don't have those big teams helping the authors. And of course, if you're a self-published author, you certainly don't have a big team. You have whatever beta readers that you have helping you, whichever editor you could pay to help you, right? You don't have a huge team behind you. So I think that when I'm reading, I just give more grace to the person who's going it alone, or the person who's had to, scrape together their lunch money to pay an editor to help them polish a book before hitting publish, right? The Hachette Group, or the Hachette Book Group, is not a huge publishing house. And I've made some notes here about them. The Hachette Book Group, they do have dozens of imprints, like the imprint that published this book. They have 11 offices, including Toronto. They publish 2,100 adult books, 500 young reader books, and 750 audiobooks per year. In 2022, they had 200 books on the New York Times bestseller list. So they're not publishing a ginormous number of books. They're not a huge conglomerate. They're not Penguin, right? They're not huge. They're not Tor. They're not Del Rey. Okay, they're not ginormous. So I'm looking at them as a mid-sized publishing house. What am I trying to say with this? I'm trying to say that I saw some items in the book, So Let Them Burn, that if I was reading it as an indie published book, I would have just like skimmed past those things. If I was reading it as a traditionally published book, like a big 5 traditionally published book, I would have been like, how dare they let this get through? So instead, I looked at these things like, oh, darn, what a shame that Kamilah Cole didn't have a larger team behind her to help her with a couple of these items. And we'll talk about those in like the pros and cons section of this video. They were small, they were minor, they weren't huge, okay? They didn't detract from the story, is what I'm trying to say. They just caught me off guard and made me think, darn, what a shame that Kamilah Cole didn't have a larger team behind her to help her. Does that make sense? Maybe we should just dive into the review now. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so let me read the cover flap for you, because the back cover is just testimonials and stuff. So the cover flap. There is nothing that Farron won't do for her sister. Farron Vincent can't channel the power of the god. I'm already screwing this up, you guys. I'm so sorry. Farron Vincent can channel the power of the gods. 5 years ago, she used her divine magic to liberate her island from its enemies, the dragon-riding Langlish Empire. But now, at 17, Farron is all powered up with no wars to fight. She's a legend to her people and a nuisance to her neighbors. When she's forced to attend an international peace summit, Farron expects that she will perform tricks like a trained pet and then go home. She doesn't expect her older sister Elara forming an unprecedented bond with an enemy dragon, or the gods claiming that the only way to break this bond is to kill her sister. As Farron's desperation to find another solution takes her down a dark path, and Elara discovers the shocking secrets at the heart of the Langlish Empire, each must make difficult choices that will shape the other's lives, as well as the fate of their world. Okay. Now this book, naked now, this book, So Let Them Burn, it's divided into 4 parts. Part 1, Seeker. 2 is Scholar. 3, Sinner. And 4, Sacrifice. And the English major in me appreciated the alliteration. That was very nice. The different parts, they're not equal. They're not equal in length, and they're not equal in pacing. They're different. The sacrifice part, part 4, was as it should be. I mean, it's the climax. It was fast. It was on fire. It was Part 4 was amazing. Okay, let me just say that. And when we get to the pros and cons section of this review, we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to give any spoilers. Don't worry about that. There won't be any spoilers. And in fact, there's one little piece of this where something might be a bit of a spoiler. And you know what I do when we have something that might be a spoiler on the channel? I'll hold up the little hashtag sign to let you know what's happening. And then when I put the sign down, I will be done with the spoiler. That way you can mute while the sign is up, just in case, because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Okay. All right. So this review, we're going to talk first about a synopsis. And I have 2 synopses for this book. Then we'll talk about the characters, and then we'll talk about pros and cons about the book. All right. So let's go to our synopsis 1. Synopsis 1. All right, I just wrote this down. Okay, 5 years after the gods intervened on behalf of San-Iri, the commander of the Langlish Empire manipulates events in an effort to get Farron Vincent to betray her homeland. That's one of the stories going through this book that I picked out for you guys. And we follow Farron Vincent, a 17-year-old girl, through part of the book. Every other chapter in the book is from Farron's point of view and is titled Farron. So we know we're in Farron's point of view. We're seeing things from her perspective. Synopsis 2. And this one I enjoyed very much. Okay, synopsis 2. Elara Vincent strives to be a member of the Irian Air Battalion, well, the Sky Battalion, but finds herself unwillingly and frighteningly bonded to an enemy's dragon instead. We follow a blossoming enemies to allies to potential lovers romance in a dark academia setting where dragons are slowly going mad from an ancient mental illness that affects both dragon and bonded riders. The enemy slowly but surely reveals his hand in the illness and his desire to take over the world, while Elara works to protect as many friends and countrymen as she can. You guys, that was the story I enjoyed so much in this book. The story of Elara, following Elara, the older sister, through this book was wonderful. I so much enjoyed the character and her story, the arc that she went on, everything that she had to do so much. Elara was my favorite. So let's talk about these characters so that we can talk about Elara as well. And we'll start with Farron, because Farron is supposed to be the main character. She's the one that we talk about on the cover flap. Farron is the one who 5 years ago, during a war, prayed to the gods of San-Iri. So the gods that watch over this island, watch over the whole Ember Sea. She prayed to these gods. They heard her and they answered her. And they came to her and basically imbued her with power, their power, whenever she needed it. They used her to, 5 years ago, they used her to conquer the dragon riders and the dragons that had come from the Langlish Empire and saved San-Iri. And so she is called the Child Empyrean. She has a title. And so from the age of 12 until age 17, she has been the Child Empyrean, and she is venerated. She is treated like a saint. She is important to these people, and she is just an absolute brat. Okay. And other characters refer to her as a brat. It's not just me saying this, but I want to show you on page 3 and page 10, we get to see her character right off the bat, as we would, since it's her story. Okay, so starting on page 3, she is at school because she's 17. She's at school, and one of the bullies after school is like taunting her and telling her, without the power of the gods, I could beat you in a foot race. Let's race to the dead egg in the center of town, and you can't use the gods to help you, and I'll beat you. Blah blah blah. So she's like, okay, fine. So we start seeing her, and it says, she had told 3 lies since this morning, and they had each felt like a spell. She had told her teacher that she'd try harder to bring up her grades before the end of the year. She had promised her sister that she would go straight home after classes were over. and she had sworn that she wouldn't use summoning to beat Jordan Simmons in this race. Okay, so those are the 3 things that she apparently lied about. When we go over to page 10, she has just won the race because she called on the power of the gods to help her. She was losing the race, so she called on the gods to help her. And one of them imbued her. I want to say part of their magic system is that the god can basically infiltrate her, can become one with her, and then she has those powers. So Jordan Simmons is saying, "We said no powers," and Farron answers, "You said no powers. I don't remember agreeing with you." So she's either lying to him now, or she and the narrator were lying to us on page 3. So there's already this tension happening with like an unreliable narrator, this character who is supposed to be our main character, who lies and is deceitful and is kind of a brat. And boy, she's just not fabulous. You know, it talks about the fact that she lies and she cheats and she calls on these gods and asks them to help her with things that are not important. They're petty things. And in fact, here we go on page 235, she's whining again because the gods are treating her like a child. Let me go to page 235. Hold, please. Here we go. Farron's cheeks burned. The fact that she had spent the last month in Jail Soto's company, under his tutelage, didn't matter as much as the realization that the gods were still treating her like a child, incapable of making her own decisions. When they hid things from her, they narrowed her choices and undermined her ability to make informed ones. She should not have learned about the empty from Gale. The empty is a place. She should not have learned about the empty from Jail, whom she had no reason to trust. And after all she had done, she should not have been learning now that the gods didn't trust her. I'm reading this thinking, well, of course they don't trust her. She lies to them. She tricks them. She uses their power for silly, petty things. Of course they don't trust her. It's an odd relationship. And let's see what else shows us her character. On page 231. Oh yeah, on page 231, she's talking to a character that she thinks is another god. And she's being snarky and rude to this character. Okay, she says to him, "You're lying to the best," she whispered, as if they were sharing secrets in the dark. "I know the rhythm of deceit. I always recognize a tell. I can craft a lie so subtle and sweet that it will dissolve in your mind and make you question what you thought you always knew to be true." She smirked. "You want to turn me against the gods. You want me to believe you're this misunderstood innocent, but I am the queen of dishonesty, and you are full of shit." So she's taunting and teasing and being a brat to this creature that she thinks is a god. So I doubt her intelligence level a little bit there too. But anyway, the character of Farron she isn't a character that I could get behind. I could not root for her. I didn't root for her. And yeah. So this is sounding kind of negative. I'm so sorry. We're going to get on to some really good stuff here in a minute, though. I just wanted to express that the character of Farron, this 17-year-old gal, just did not impress me. I didn't root for her. I didn't feel sorry for her when things didn't go her way. Yeah, I didn't root for her. Now, there were other characters in here I did root for. There's a character named Reeve Warwick. He is 18 when we meet him in the book. So he is Elara's age, the older sister. I made a note here. He's good at catching these two sisters when they sneak out of the house. Like when they sneak out of a balcony or out of a window, they're in different locations at different times. And he's good at catching them as they're sneaking out of places. And I got to thinking about that. Like, well, isn't that an interesting layer to his personality? Like he's also sneaking around, if you think about it. And I didn't pick up on that as I was reading the book. I picked up on it later as I was making my notes about the book. And that's intriguing. Kamilah Cole snuck that in there nicely. I'm intrigued by that layer. Anyway, so on page 172, Reeve Warwick is talking to our main character, Farron, and he's finally upset with her. She has finally made him so mad that he's lashing out and saying something not very nice, but he's saying something back at her. He's saying something back to her that kind of catches her off guard and makes her do some introspective thinking afterward. Does he say? The fact, Farron, he continued, is that everyone talks about you as if you're a saint, Elara included sometimes. But all I see is a spoiled, selfish child who wastes all her potential, blaming everyone else for her problems. See, Warwick has seen through the child Empyrean. He sees her as this kid who's like whining and not fulfilling her true destiny, not doing the things she's supposed to be doing. And he's calling her out on it. Reeve Warwick, he, as a 13-year-old child, got away from the Langlish Empire, where he's from, got away from his father, the commander in the Langlish Empire, took some papers from them, brought those papers to the enemy, to the queen, to the people at St. Iry, and handed those papers over so that he could stop the war, so that he could stop so much death and destruction. He was a hero, but he's heralded as a traitor. The people in the Langlish Empire see him as a traitor, and they would like to kill him, right? The people on St. Iry see him as the enemy because he's from Langley. He's from the enemy's camp, and they don't recognize fully what he did to save them, to end the war. They don't see what he did. And so many people just see him as an enemy. So many people that literally spit on him when he's in the streets, literally beat him up. I mean, this character is just tortured and tormented throughout this book. But he's this stoic character who still tries to do the right thing. He studies and he reads up on history of both sides, right? He's always trying to get more information so that he is well informed. So the next time there's a conflict, he'll know what to do again, right? He's always trying to improve himself. And he is Elara's friend. Elara is his friend. And that friendship that those two have transcends the craziness and the bad things that happen to him. And because of their friendship, Farron will put up with him. Farron, who loves her sister Elara, puts up with this friend of Elara's. And it's that friendship that it's that friendship that keeps Farron and Reeve working together when Elara is taken away. So let's talk about Elara being taken away. Let's talk about Elara. Elara Vincent was my favorite. She is 18 when we meet her. Elara is, she is a lesbian. She is a peacekeeper. She is non-confrontational. Personality-wise, she is non-confrontational. But she is ready and willing to enlist in the Sky Battalion when we meet her. She has been working so hard at learning battle and technique and how to fight with the least amount of moves to, overcome your opponent. But she's been learning and doing this because she's the sister of the child Empyrean, right? She has to be able to fight next to her sister if ever war should come again. Okay. And she handles like crushing defeat again and again and again. She handles like crushing disappointment again and again and again. And she handles it beautifully. She handles it like a stoic character would handle it, right? For example, when we meet her in the book, she is with some of her friends, and one of her friends is named Cherry, and she and Cherry used to have a relationship. she's able to still be friends with Cherry. She's able to still train side by side with Cherry, even though they no longer have that relationship that they used to have. But they can be friends now. And so even though Elara doesn't have that loving relationship that she used to have with Cherry, she can still have that friendship. So she suffered that disappointment. She's gotten over it. Another defeat that she has to deal with is she wants to join the Sky Battalion for SanDsaysRead. She wants to be, and we're going to talk about the drakes, but she wants to pilot or co-pilot a drake, but the drake doesn't choose her. And so she has to deal with that just soul-crushing disappointment of, I didn't get chosen, darn, right? But she does, she deals with it. Then she gets chosen by a dragon. One of the enemy's dragons comes to SanDsaysRead during this peace summit. So these dragons are here, and one of the dragons calls to Elara, and that bond between them just forms. They attach. And so this is, I mean, this is unprecedented. This is unheard of. This is unwanted. And yet here it is. And so Elara is like, well, okay, this is what I have to do now. Fine. And the queen asks Elara, hey, since this bond has happened, since you have to go back to Langley for this, how about you do some spying for me? Elara's like, okay, fine, I will do that too. I mean, she's just this stoic character who's going to do what she has to do. She's going to get the job done. She's amazing. She's wonderful. The co-writer who is also bonded to this dragon is, we're going to talk about her in a second. She's awful at first, right? Her name is Signy, and she doesn't want a co-writer at first. She certainly doesn't want that co-writer to be from SanDsaysRead, an enemy, a person who doesn't know anything about dragons or dragon culture, right? Dragon heritage. She doesn't want someone that she has to train from the very beginning, right? And so there's this tension again. And Elara's like, well, okay, this sucks a lot, but all right, I'm going to have to deal with it and try to get along with this person. And she does, right? So yeah, she's amazing. Elara has to leave everything she knows behind to go into the enemy's land with this dragon and co-writer that she's now bonded to. I mean, she gives up everything to go into this other land to spy on them for the queen. She must, and so she does. And that's a strong character right there. I was so impressed with her. She's wonderful. And something kind of sad happens. I saw something kind of sad happening. Let's see if I've got it marked. Page 284. Yeah. While Elara is in, enemy land, while she's there, she has a device, a magic device that we'll talk about, a magic device that lets her communicate with her sister back home. And through that device, at one point, she mentions a dragon relic that Reeve has, because Reeve is from Langley, so he has a dragon relic. She mentions that relic, and Farron she's like offended about the relic. And Farron doesn't recognize that her sister Elara has been with these dragon riders and this dragon culture for a couple of months. And Farron doesn't recognize that Elara might be forming friendships, that through this dragon bond, she might be gaining understanding of these things, right? So Farron's gut reaction is like to be repulsed by this dragon relic concept, right? And it kind of made me sad the way this went down. So on page 284, we have the two of them talking through this communication device. And Elara said, maybe if you use his dragon relic, and Farron interrupts. Maybe if I what? Farron had responded, baffled. Why would I touch that disgusting thing when the medical summoner is already hard at work? Elara had been quiet for a moment before clearing her throat. You're right. Sorry. And that touched me. That made me feel really bad for poor Elara. She's being so stoic and she's trying so hard. And her sister is repulsed by something that Elara is starting to understand and be a part of. And that was disappointing. Now, there are a couple of things about Elara's character that were amazing and great, and I wanted to read them for you, but they could give a spoiler. So I'm going to hold up the sign, while I read these two passages for you about Elara. And that way you can mute this while the sign is up. And when I'm done, I'll put the sign down and you can unmute. Okay, just in case these things are spoilery, all right? Because I don't want to spoil things for you. So here goes the sign, all right? So mute. All right, so I really appreciated Elara more, like each time that she did some cool thing while she was over with the Langley people, all right? And here's one. When Elara and her co-writer have to go on sort of like a covert mission kind of thing, okay? And it says, Elara tried to keep a dam between Signy and her own concern, because this was not about her. She was only here because being alone with the director was a prospect just as daunting for Signy as seeing her imprisoned father again. So Elara is there to help Signy. She's there to help her friend. And even though it's, daunting to Elara, she's keeping that at bay. She's not letting her own emotions flow through the bond and upset Signy. She's keeping that at bay because she's focused on helping her friend. And that shows a lot about her character. I like that. And then on page 376, and this is really toward the back of the book, so I didn't want to give away a spoiler back here. But one of the gods is speaking to Elara here. Irie is the god. Irie said nothing, but her gaze turned thoughtful. The decision to become the Empyrean is not one to be made lightly. Your sister was very young when she made the choice, and she has resented us for it ever since. It is not, as she thought, a one and done. If your world is threatened again, you must rise to meet it. And Elara says, I'm 18 years old. That makes me an adult on my island. Sorry, the birds are getting upset in the background. I'm 18 years old. That makes me an adult on my island. I'm doing this first and foremost for my sister. But it was my dream to join the Sky Battalion, to defend San Irie whenever war came to our shores. That wasn't a decision I made lightly, and neither is this. So she is going to make a decision to take over a position that is, it's daunting, it's scary, it's frightening, it's a big deal, it's a big decision. She's going to do it. She's going to do it for the good of her people. And kudos to her. I mean, that just shows her character right there. Okay, so I'm putting the sign is down. You guys can come on back now. Unmute. Okay, so that shows us more of Elara's character and just how cool and awesome she is. More of the characters in the book. We have the Queen, Aveline. I think she's a couple years older than Farron. I got the impression they're close in age, but not exactly the same age. The Queen was actually living, not in exile, but living in secret on a farm somewhere. And when the gods gave their power to Farron 5 years ago, they told her, okay, now go get the Queen. Here's where she is. She's, in hiding. Her family put her in this place kind of out of sight, out of mind, where she's safe. Go get her. Let her know that her destiny is to come back here and be the queen of San Irie. So Farron had to go get her. And Aveline has sort of resented her for that ever since. And so Farron and Aveline have this sort of contested, they're not friends, this sort of contested relationship. They're not exactly on good terms with one another because of that. And she has a lot of just difficult things that she has to do. The Queen does. She's a lot of hard decisions she has to make. Obviously, she's the Queen, but she has put together this peace summit where the people from Langley have come over to their island and they're trying to make peace. At least the Queen is trying to make peace. We also have the character of Signy. Signy is the co-dragon rider, the co-writer that has come over from Langley. She's part of that Peace Summit delegation. She came over with her dragon, Zephyra, and we're going to talk about Zephyra too. But Signy has, she has her own, demons to deal with. Her father is in prison. I'm not going to tell you why, because that would spoil way too many things, but her father's in prison and she hasn't seen him for, 5 years, right? She would like to get family back together. She would like to see him. She would like to get him out of prison. Let's leave it at that. I don't want to spoil things. Let's leave it at that. But she has a lot of anger. She has a lot of distrust, as she should. I mean, a lot of these characters in this book had a lot of distrust going on. Then Zephyra. Zephyra is the dragon that we get to learn the most about. Obviously, she's the one that Elara bonds to. She's green, and the green ones are the smallest of the different dragon species that we learn about. And she respects Alara's wish to like stay out of her head. Like when the bond happens between the co-riders and the dragon, the three of them share a bond that lets them speak to one another telepathically, lets them feel one another's emotions. So if Alara is having a down day, Zephyra can feel that. She can sense that, and she can like send her feelings of hope, feelings of love, feelings of happiness. And she can help her, right? And she tries. But I did have this moments where I was wondering, okay, so is Zephyra trustworthy or not? And I thought that Kamilah Cole did a really good job of kind of threading that thought of, okay, is this dragon good or not good? In the early stages of our relationship with Zephyra. She did a nice job of that. So I'm going to show you that on pages 177 and 178, because I wrote it in the margins. I wrote, do we trust this dragon or not? So on page 177, it says, and Zephyra floated belly up between two of the docks like a silent threat. Which, okay, what? And then on page 178, we have, let's see, both of you. She added in her mind, you cannot force me to accept this bond. I have to come to you by choice or not at all. This is Elara saying this, and she felt an answering thread of remorse float from Zephyra and ignored it. So Zephyra is sending that thread of remorse. She's thinking, okay, so sorry that you feel like we're forcing ourselves upon you. And I thought, okay, so we do trust the dragon. The dragon is feeling remorseful and wanting to help. And as we go through the narrative, as we go through the relationships those three are forming, we do see that Zephyra is helpful and she is trying to help. And the three of them are forming a bond that is good. It was wonderful. I loved the dragons. Okay. I'm so sorry about the birds in the background, you guys. I did give them treats before I started this to like placate them. Okay, other characters that we had that were important to the story were, of course, the three gods that were communicating and helping Farron. And then there was a fourth god, we think a fourth god, and his name is Jael Soto. These are the characters that interacted with Farron most often as she was training and learning and doing and trying to help her sister Elara. Her whole point in this book was to get Elara back from the Langlish Empire. She wanted to find a way to break that bond between Elara and that dragon and bring Elara back. That was Farron's goal in this book. Even though there were all these like schemes and machinations going on that were going to start another war, Farron's goal wasn't stop a war. Farron's goal was get my sister back. Yeah. Okay. So those are our characters. I try not to give away too much that would be spoilery with those characters. Those are our characters. So now let's talk about the pros and the cons in this book. Because you guys, I think I had mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned it on this channel, that while I was reading this one, I got through part 1 and I just wasn't getting sucked in. I was having trouble with it. And I figured out what my trouble was. My trouble was the world building. I don't know if you guys know this about me. I've given classes on world building, like the Romance Writers of America's Silken Sands conference. I did a world building workshop there. The Imaginarium conference. I've done a world building workshop there. I teach how to world build to other authors. I've done world building for my own series, right? I teach this. And so when I'm in a book where I can't figure out the world, it's weird to me and it distracts me and it pulls me out of the story. And I was having some trouble with it. So I want to talk about that a little bit and then we'll dive into the pros and the good stuff. Okay. But the world building was an issue that I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up, if I didn't share that in this review, because I mean, one of the first things that stood out to me was we're in a setting that feels almost like medieval fantasy at one time, because when we start, we have I wrote it down. We have thatched roofs. We have fences and cacti that are separating the yards, the people's homes. We have gardens. We have goats. We have mules. We have donkeys. We have dirt, dusty roads. Because when the queen comes into Dead Egg, the town of Dead Egg, when she's coming in, she's in a horse-drawn carriage. It's a coach, and it's drawn by horses. And Farron is commenting to herself that no one else can afford a coach like that, and no one else has horses drawing their coaches like that. We use mules and donkeys here because no one can afford something that lavish, right? She's the queen; she can afford that. So we're starting out with this sense of something almost medieval, almost at least older times, right? And then it gets different. It changes a little bit. Like all of a sudden we have, when we go into Elara's point of view, Elara's chapter, and they're practicing and training with like swords and combat. Okay, swords and combat is still feeling a touch medieval. We're still getting that fantasy vibe, but when they're done training, someone brings over from a cart freeze pops, like frozen dessert in this hot, humid island land. Someone brings freeze pops. So somehow they have technology to freeze things. Now, okay, yes, you can have an ice house. I get it. Like back in the prairie days, ice houses were built and you had straw packed around ice that you took out of the pond that froze in the winter. But listen to me, right? Do you hear what I'm saying? I was thinking those things in my mind instead of concentrating on the story. Instead of concentrating on the story, I was wondering, how did they get frozen treats in this world? And so I mean, you guys, I started thinking about Almanzo and Laura Wilder in the prairie days, and how Almanzo told Laura that, the rich man gets his ice in the summer and the poor man gets his in the winter, because in the winter stuff freezes and you can pull the ice out of the pond. I was thinking about Laura Ingalls Wilder instead of focusing on the story. That's what was happening while I was, and that's not good. That's a problem. And it was just difficult for me to get into the world, is what I'm trying to say. When we got over to the Langlish Empire, there were Hearthstone is the dark academia place, the school where Elara and Signy were going in and meeting the rest of their den. Hearthstone, they had glass lamps with candles lit behind them. Okay, so glass lamps with candles lit behind them. So I'm thinking, okay, candle lit lamps, sconces, got it. I'm with you there. I'm tracking with you. But then at another point, I'm telling you guys, electric lamps came up. And I'm like, how is there electricity? How is that happening? Okay, so the Langlish Empire must have electricity. Well, it's the mainland. Maybe they have electricity. Why is there electricity in this world? How did that happen? The Langlish Empire, the capital city of Beacon, has houses of stone and wood. And then there are chamber pots and burning coal. There was a scent of chamber pots and burning coal in the city, in the capital city. But the National Hall of Honors was made of brick, stone, and slate, had mansard roofs, colonnades, and gas chandeliers for lights. Gas chandeliers for lights. So instead of the candles behind glass, instead of electric lamps, we have gas chandeliers, with all the different types of technology for lighting the place, a different smattering of technology. And it kept taking me out of the story because I kept wondering, what time period are we in? Is this the Iron Age? Is this more modern? What time are we in? Is this urban fantasy? Because I don't understand. And then I thought, you know what? It is steampunk. Fight me in the comments below. This is a steampunk novel. And you know why? Because of the drakes. The drakes are these machines. And did I write it down for you guys? Yes, I did. Okay. The drakes, and they're part of the magic discussion that we're going to have. The drakes are awesome and cool. Okay. The drakes are giant flying metal war machines made from a textured material called scalestone, but they're semi-sentient. So it doesn't say that they were powered by steam, but they are powered by something, and it's magical. Okay. There you go. Okay. So the world building was confusing. But a pro is that was a con. A pro is the magic in the world. The magic systems, and I'm calling it plural, were cool. And let me tell you about the magic systems. They had astral summoning of ancestors. Everyone in San Iri had the ability to summon their ancestors or receive a summoning from their ancestors. So when Elara needed, like if she needed assistance in her combat, she could call on one of her aunts to basically imbue her, like come and be part of her, infiltrate her system, be one with her. And so her aunt would project into her and help her fight her combatant. Everyone in San Iri can do this. It's cool. It's an interesting concept. I thought that was very cool. There's also the magic of the dragon bond, right? That is from Langley. The people in the Langlish Empire, if they're chosen, they can bond with their dragon, right? Here's the thing. When Elara bonds with Zephyra, her ability to summon her ancestors, that astral summoning is interfered with. It interferes with that, and she can no longer summon her ancestors. And that leaves like a void in her. She is so, it's very sad. It's like overwhelming sadness at first when she realizes she can no longer summon her ancestors. It messes with her. She gets past it because she's a stoic, amazing character, but it messes with her. There's also the Empyrean bond. The child Empyrean, Farron, she's able to summon the gods themselves, these three gods. She can summon any one of them that she needs, and they will basically imbue her with their power, which is amazing. And then there is this concept of the scalestone. Now, I don't know if I would consider that a magic or if that is a device, but the scalestone is like a material that there is an egg in the center of the town of Dead Egg that is made of this scalestone. And it's basically a dead egg that sits there like a sculpture, right? No one's supposed to touch it, although Farron does sit on it and play with it because she's a brat, right? But no one's supposed to touch this thing, and it's supposed to stay there as like a symbol of winning a war, right? Okay. But let's go to page 19 to talk about these drakes and their use of the scalestone. Page 19. Drakes, the giant flying metal war machines made from a textured material called scalestone, were semi-sentient. They were built by summoners channeling astrals to mold the scalestone into the size and shape of dragons. Irian magic could affect any metal as easily as it affected the world around it, but scalestone was impervious to dragonfire, and it amplified Aryan magic until it could rival the war beasts in power. That made it San Iri's greatest resource, especially since it could only be found in San Iri. So scalestone is pretty freaking cool. I thought that was awesome and great too. All right, more prose in this book. The prose, oh yeah, there was a nice explanation of how war had affected a couple of characters on page 255. 255, can I find it? Hold, please. Let me get there. Okay, page 255. And I'm not going to tell you what's going on around this because I think I'll end up spoiling something. So let me just tell you just this passage. Let me just read for you this passage. This is going to give you a flavor of Kamilah Cole's writing style. It's really nice how she gave us a feel for what there were two characters, not not vital, not important characters, but these two characters, how they were feeling, and Farron's reaction. The other man had no such decoration, but looking closer revealed that half his face was twisted and scarred from burns. It didn't take much of a leap to guess he'd fallen victim to a dragon attack. That was one of life's most tragic secrets. War never actually ended. It survived in the lives destroyed by things large and small. The soldiers whose nightmares haunted them even with their eyes open, whose reflexes were forever set on kill, whose adjustments to peacetime came with the sobering knowledge that they were forever out of sync with a world that was desperate to move on from what they couldn't. The families whose loved ones were the soldiers who never made it home, whose lives had been bisected into the before and after of having them around. The civilians who had lost mobility, lost property, lost sanity, or lost sleep to the shadow of a beast that announced itself with a roar before the roaring fire, if you were lucky. War survived in the buildings now built to withstand fires, as well as hurricanes and floods, in the redrawn town lines, and the landmarks turned to ruin. And it survived in the hearts now filled with a hatred, suspicion, and paranoia that hadn't existed before they were forced to grapple with all the ways humans could hurt one another. Isn't that sad? But deep and meaningful. And I'm so glad that Kamilah included that in here. And she put it in here from Farron's point of view, which I thought was intriguing and nice. All right. More prose in the book. Part 4 of this thing was fire. The last part of this book, even though it was the shortest part, it was fast and furious. It was all that. It was the climax it was supposed to be. The parts 1 through 3, I put in the con category. They didn't engage me the way I wanted them to. Like I said earlier, it's when I was reading this thing, I mean, I had put it down at one point. I came back to it. I put it down again. I had difficulty getting through it. And I think it's because of the world building. That, and I didn't like Farron. But I really did like Elara. And she's in the prose column. I really liked Elara. I really liked her arc. I liked what she was doing. I think her stick-to-itiveness is probably why I stuck to the book. I think so. Let's see what else. More prose. Very good use of Chekhov's law. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the elements in that first part that come to bear in the ending, in the last part. I'm not going to tell you all the part because I will spoil everything, right? But very good use of Chekhov's law. I was impressed with that. Then let's talk about some just little nitpicky stuff in the cons column, just little nitpicky things, because I must. They're just little nitpicky, and then we'll get back to fabulous good things. Okay, page 188, smiles that never happened. What was that? Oh yeah. Okay. There is a section in here. We're going to talk about the dragons, and after we're talking about the dragons and this mental illness that they suffer from, Elara is sad. She's not happy. She's not thrilled. She has not been smiling. She has actually, I think she has had a vision, but she has pain lit up her cheek because someone just slapped her to bring her back to reality. And someone is staring at her. She's looking at her gloves. Let's see. Then it says, the smile dropped from her face. She clasped her hands behind her back where she wouldn't have to see the gloves, wouldn't have to acknowledge, a thought, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote in the margin, at what point in any of this was she smiling? She was not smiling at any of this. And I couldn't figure out where that happened. I know that's a nitpicking little thing. And I'm so sorry to be just like, but it took me out of the story. It took me out of the story enough that I wrote down at what point of there were just little things like that once in a while would take me out of the story and make me go, wait a minute, how is this happening? For example, we had like a pacing thing that happened on page 233. Let's see if I can get it for you. Yeah, I wrote in the margin pacing. This is Farron. Farron jolted upward in bed, trying to wrap her mind around the sudden change in scenery. A tray was on her side table. The scent of roasted breadfruit and scrambled eggs wafted from beneath its cover. The temple, she reminded herself as she bit into a slice of breadfruit. She would go back to the temple today. She had to talk to the gods. She had to ask them about the gray saint and the empty. The pacing, there's something missing in there. Like something should have happened between thinking about scrambled eggs and biting into there should have been something happening. And every once in a while, things like that would happen. And things like that are why I wish that a team would have been on Kamilah Cole's side. I wish that there had been, like an extra editor or extra content editor. I wish there had been extra people on her team, because that just little things like that take you out of the story. An extra editor would have said, oh, hey, we didn't fix this section right here. You know what I'm saying? And then it would have flowed more. It would have flowed better. It would have been better flow. I know I'm just being nitpicky, and I shouldn't, because that's just nitpicky. But that is something that took me out of the story. It might take someone else out of the story. So there's your warning. Back to the prose and the good, fabulous things, such as the dragons. We're doing this review for Year of the Dragon and celebrating Year of the Dragon Chinese New Year week, right? So let's talk about these dragons, because they were awesome and great. Zephyra was really cool. I enjoyed the character of Zephyra, as I mentioned when we were talking about the characters. I enjoyed her very much. She, Kamilah did a good job of making us wonder, okay, is Zephyra good? Is Zephyra not? When we were first meeting her, when we were first interacting with her, right? But then we got to know her better. We got to know this dragon better, and we got to realize, okay, yeah, she is a good dragon. Yeah, she is, on our side, right? But the other dragons, some of them good, some of them not so good. I'm not going to tell you all those things, but I am going to talk about the dragons and their mental illness. There is a thing called the fury that overtakes the dragons every once in a while. Let me get to that page 201. Page 201. Hold, please. Oh, page 201 is the types of dragons. I'm sorry. We'll get to their fury in a minute. Okay, so page 201 tells us the types of dragons that Elara is learning about. She learned that there were 4 breeds of dragon. Carmine dragons, the largest breed, came in different shades of red. Medallion dragons, the second largest, came in shades of yellow. Ultramarine dragons, blue-colored and more aquatic than all the other breeds combined, were the second smallest. And then there were sage dragons like Zephyra, small and green and scarily intelligent. Hearthstone uniforms were color-coded, Elara's pine green cuffs and shirts symbolizing to anyone and everyone that a sage was her mount. She learned the differences between first riders like Signy and Jesper and wing leaders like her and Tori. First riders led the dragons into battle and maintained an active offense. Wing leaders fought on the ground and provided a ranged defense. Humans didn't know which one they would be until they bonded with their dragon, and only dragons seemed to know what made a soul more likely to be one than the other. All right. Then on page 186, we talk about the bond and the fury. This also gives us a feel for Kamilah's style as well. This is the big baddie. This is Commander Warwick talking to Elara. This is the two of them. And she is talking first. I know that the Lenglish worship their dragons, she began haltingly, and that there's a divine figure called the Gray Saint, who's venerated for being the first dragon rider. I know that, according to legend, the Gray Saint's disappearance is what led to dragons choosing 2 riders instead of 1, but I'm not sure I understand why. It seems to go against what I've learned so far. We believe that the first dragon emerged from the divine plane in the Cinder Circle. Elara filed away that title for later and consulted her mental world map. The Cinder Circle was located above Isalina. It was a ring of islands that were uninhabitable because of the active volcanoes that had created them. Their ever-shifting landscapes were formed and reformed by the constant eruptions. If a dragon were going to explode into the mortal realm, that would definitely be the place for it. From there, the first dragon flew to the lands that would eventually become the Langlish Empire and faced the Grey Saint. They bonded, and they passed that sacred knowledge on to our people. But the Grey Saint, Warwick chuckled, though there was no humor in it. They say that he went mad. A dragon's mind is so large, so alien, so vast compared to that of a single human that, rather than intertwining, one soul consumed the other. Instead of tempering the first dragon's instincts, he embodied more and more of the dragon's savagery. He became a tyrant instead of a hero, more monster than man. From his failure, dragons learned that they had to find two souls that shared the celestial material of their own, because one alone is too weak for a true partnership. That is why there are two riders for every dragon. Because the fury affects the rider instead of the dragon when there's only one? Warwick made a thoughtful sound. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I suppose you're right. So this fury, it sort of infects the dragon and then gets into the riders, because as we mentioned, the riders are bonded to this dragon, right? There's two riders, they're bonded to this creature that when this creature suddenly becomes overcome with this fury, with this wrath, with this just insanity, it infects the two riders as well. And we see that happen a couple of times in the narrative, and we see how some characters can help, some characters cannot. We see how Elara, she's brilliant. Have I mentioned that I really like the character of Elara? She's able to think through a solution one time to help some writers who are experiencing that with their dragon. I mean, it's amazing how Elara is so very smart. You guys, thumbs up for amazing, cool dragons, for Elara Vincent and all that she goes through, her amazing arc and the wonderfulness of that. I think that, oh, here, hold on a second. Because I made the book naked, right? Get that where you, ta-da. I think that So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole is a great dragon read. I think that you guys would enjoy it. If you can get around Farron and her 17-year-old angst, I think that you would find the dragons amazing if you like dragons at all. There you go. The reason I picked up this book, the reason I pre-ordered this one to get here on its release day, is because Kamilah Cole was targeted by someone nasty, and that someone nasty was one-star review bombing a lot of authors. And Kamilah Cole was one of those authors being bullied, basically. So I looked at what she had to offer in this book, decided I wanted to read it and do something kind. And this was the best I could do, buying the book, reading the book. And I think that's another reason why I powered through it. Elara and her stick-to-itiveness made me want to power through. The fact that Kamilah had been targeted and bullied made me want to power through. And I'm so glad that I did, because the ending is worth it, you guys. Yeah, the idea of So Let Them Burn is accurate. I mean, the fourth part of this book, everything's on fire and it's amazing. So I can recommend that. That's it, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel, because we talk about dragon stuff, fantasy books, all kinds of different books here all the time. And that's a good thing to subscribe to. Thank you so much for tuning in.